goes. Let's look at the way that Senator McCain has tried to deal with this this week. He was on a tour all week long. Basically, his character and biography tour kicked off by this ad.
What must a president believe about us? And what must we believe about that president? Has he walked the walk?
What is your rank? Lieutenant Commander in the Navy. And your official number? 624787.
John McCain, the American president Americans have been waiting for.
George laid a powerful foundation there for the campaign and then seemed to spend the rest of the week going to Mississippi, talking about Mo Udall in Arizona, going to Memphis on the anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination, sending out a message that I am not George Bush.
He's not George Bush, but it's a retrospective message. He's saying, look back to the past at my heroic service to the country, which is germane because it goes to character. Then he says, look back at my prescience on Iraq, on the insufficient troop levels, and that goes to judgment, so it's all pertinent. But it is retrospective. Some point he's going to have to look forward, and the questions are going to be, since you have said the only thing worse than a war with Iran is a nuclear-armed Iran, are you not logically committed to go into war to stop what they show no intention of stopping, their nuclear program?
How does he deal
on
with
the
it?
economy, his proposals are adolescent. I mean, he says we ought to do, the lenders in the housing industry ought to do what General Motors did after 9/11 and have zero interest. I don't know how that applies.
What McCain is realizing, the campaign is realizing, is that the way to get into the news in a situation like this is either to be part of the conflict, which he's not. The conflict is Hillary or Obama. Or it's to be talking about what's in the news. And he hasn't been doing that. He's been talking about biography. It's an important groundwork-laying narrative, but he's not sort of pivoting what's on the news cycle. This week he will. He's delivering an important speech at the VFW in Kansas. He's going to talk about Petraeus. He's going to talk about what happened in Basra, try to put things in context. And then you're going to see in mid-April, he's going to start delivering a series of economic addresses. I think the game changers for him are new policies, prescriptive elements that he'll talk about, and then increasing narrative about who he's going to choose as his VP.
Yeah, I want to get to
the
that.
other thing, though, is that even with everything that George has said about retrospective and all of that, and you know, in Memphis he went and apologized for voting against the Martin Luther King holiday in the first place. Even with that, and even with 81% of the people saying the country is off in the wrong track, he's even or winning in the polls. So there's something he's doing right here.
But, you know, campaigns are about the present and the future. And he will be confronted with questions about what he's going to do in a country where last week 80,000 jobs were lost. His program for homeowners is basically to say, drop dead.
And this is where
and then, you know, with Martin Luther,
because he's going to have to vote.
And Martin Luther King, I mean, he was out of step with his own Republican Party in 1983. Not only that, in '87 he voted against making King holiday a state holiday, and then in '89 against a federal.
And especially against Barack Obama, that can drive his percentage of the black vote down to 5 or 4%. Which brings me back to you, Dan Senor. You believe, at least, or have some reporting, that the idea of Condoleezza Rice as a presidential pick is not dead.
No, because basically what the McCain campaign has to consider is whether or not they want to pick a total outsider, fresh face, someone a lot younger than him, and a governor who people aren't that familiar with. The challenge they're realizing is they'll have to spend 30 to 45 days, which they won't have at that point, educating the American public about who this person is. And if this is an obscure figure,
the Dan Quayle problem.
Right, and allows Barack Obama to say, Senator McCain, you've made experience such a big issue. It's funny you would choose someone as your successor who is less experienced than me.
You mean Condi Rice is an unknown
No. So the other option, so the other category, the other category.
She's the worst national security advisor in modern history, sorry.
The other category is someone who people instantly say, the second they see that announcement, I get it. That person could be president tomorrow. Condi Rice is an option. Tom Ridge is an option, although I think he'd have problems at the convention. Mitt Romney's an option. Condi Rice has been actively, actually, in recent weeks, campaigning for this. There's this ritual in Washington. The Americans for Tax Reform, which is headed by Grover Norquist, he holds a weekly meeting of conservative leaders, about 100, 150 people, sort of inside chattering class types. And they all typically get briefings from political conservative leaders. 10 days ago, they had an interesting visit. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. The first time a Secretary of State has visited the Wednesday meeting. And she wasn't there to talk about the NATO meeting in Bucharest.
Middle East peace process.
If George Bush had taken my advice and put her on the ticket in 2004, we would have had a very different Republican situation right now.
George, is it possible?
It is possible. In fact, I guess I'm not talking out of school when I say that in our green room last week when Senator Lieberman was on, he said, well, perhaps Condi, and of course Lieberman is very close. The question is, do you want to make this really about Iraq?
Right.
Well, Lindsey Graham was saying maybe you do. Maybe you do reinforce what they consider to be a John McCain strength.
You know, it's just going to metastasize, George, in this next period. I think it's going to metastasize the occupation, as Jim Webb put it accurately. It is an occupation. And John McCain has said that the Democrats have characterized his position inaccurately. He was talking about an occupation. And I think Condi Rice, who was and has been called by many, even in the Republican Party, one of the worst national security advisors, you leash McCain to this surge, to this war.
He's leashed no matter what.
That's right.
No, but it compounds it, as George said.
He's leashed no matter what. The question is, the McCain campaign wants to flip the risk equation. If we operationalize what Barack Obama's talking about in Iraq, we'll probably have to go back in. So leave the adults here to provide some sober analysis to say, if we go back in, it's going to be more costly to American lives and American treasure.
But in a moment where you want someone with some economics, apart from a snake oil of more deregulation and tax cuts, for the richest, what do you do with a Condi Rice who hasn't spoken articulately to that issue?
It's a national security versus an economics campaign.
Very
Which is a
clearly
campaign that McCain does well in. It's a situation that McCain does well.